Namaste. It's good to see you. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Nayaswami Vijay. I'm living in Noida. Today's subject is, what does it mean to live the spiritual life? And I'd like to read from Whispers from Eternity. Demand to travel by the one highway of realization. Our one Father, we are traveling by many true paths toward thy one abode of light. Show us the one highway of common realization, where all bypaths of theological beliefs meet. Make us feel that the diverse religions are branches of thy one tree of truth. Bless us that we enjoy the intuition-tested, ripe, luscious fruits of self-knowledge, hanging from the many branches of true scriptural teachings. In thy one temple of silence, we all sing to the chorus of many-voiced religions. Teach us to chant in harmony with thy love's manifold expressions, that our chorus of souls may rouse thee to break thy vow of cosmic silence and lift us onto thy lap of universal, immortal understanding. When I was growing up, my family, we were Jewish, but not really by religion, by culture. My parents didn't really practice Judaism. We had big dinners at the holidays. That was our practice of Judaism, was mainly to eat. And then, of course, after dinner there would be arguing. So it was not what you would call an uplifting environment. And but I was aware of society in general, and it was my impression that religion was very much about a set of rules that you had to believe in and that you had to follow. And that this is really the essence of it. And that if you believe those set of rules and you followed those set of rules within certain parameters which were not necessarily clear, in other words, how good did you really have to be to go to heaven? That was always a little bit unclear. Because according to some paths, you could be really bad your whole life, but as long as you confessed sincerely before you died and you were absolved by the priest, then you were going to heaven. And that always struck me as slightly unfair. It seemed to me that God would be a little bit more fair, that somebody who had lived according to the rules their whole life should somehow, I mean, I'm not against compassion, but somehow they should be a little bit better off for eternity than the guy who just made it in at the last second. But what did I know it, you know? So I really didn't think that spirituality was particularly present in religion. Religion, all you had to do is follow the rules. You didn't really have to do much beyond that. Maybe say a few prayers. But when people say prayers, much of the time what they're doing is they're talking to a God that they don't really know, but they either hope that God is there, or they believe that God is there, but they have no sense of personal connection to that God. And they may have a cultural and personal connection to their religion, to the group of people that they've grown up with in that religion, and that may be very positive. But that is not the same as, well, I didn't find out about this until much later. I mean, you hear about saints, but what does that really mean? What does it mean to be a saint? And my impression from the way it was presented was that saints were special. Special meaning, yes, they did special things, like heal people and other things like that. But the reason that they were special was because God decided that they were special, not that they had anything to do about it, really. They all seemed quite surprised themselves and oftentimes didn't really understand what was going on. And so over time I began to realize that there was a real difference between religion and spirituality, because as I later learned, saints have an incredible experience of God. And that experience of God is the real essential thing to understand if you want to talk about living the spiritual life. If we do not experience God's presence in our life, then we haven't fully entered into the spiritual life. Now, you say, well, there's degrees of feeling God's presence. In the yoga teachings, we talk samadhi, oneness, conscious union with infinite spirit. That seems like pretty great, the ultimate experience. But the reality is that you cannot be alive and not experience God to some degree. Because God is the animating presence in everything, in all of life. This is really good news. Most people don't realize that you cannot not be on the spiritual path. The spiritual life is life. There is no way not to be living the spiritual life. But the difference is that many people in life are living the spiritual life unconsciously. They don't realize that that's what they're doing. Just the way, young people in school, they don't really understand why they need to get an education. Much of the time, they don't see the point. Why am I here? Let's go play. What am I going to use this for? I used to do that all the time in school. Why do I need to learn this? Why could I possibly care about the history of, Spain? I don't know any Spaniards. I've never been in Spain. And yes, later on I learned that a knowledge of world events is broadening to our understanding. It helps us to see a larger picture than we would see if we only paid attention to our own small little corner of the world. So as a young child, I didn't realize that there was much more scope to education than just what was in the classroom. And it's the same in the spiritual life. When people are young spiritually, because spirituality is evolution, all of life is ever new. Every soul is going through the creation in their own unique expression of spirit. And each one is in a different class, so to speak, a different level of spiritual evolution. And the whole process of the spiritual life is one of expansion, of seeing a bigger and bigger picture, but seeing it not just from the outside, most importantly, seeing it from the inside. That's the experience. And that's why in the yoga teachings, we emphasize experience. We have beliefs that we each believe, but if we were to catalog the beliefs of each person here, we would find that there's some things the same and some things different. In other words, we have our own individualized interpretation of what we believe. And those beliefs may or may not be correct, technically. But the key to understanding religion is that all of the things that people think that they know about truth and God and spirit, their opinions on the subject, those opinions really don't matter very much. except to the extent that they are motivated or not motivated to seek greater spiritual understanding. The thing that makes the difference and why we connect the yoga teachings to the scientific age is that the scientific mind understands that it's got to be something that you can experience. It can't just be theory. If there's a theory, a hypothesis, then you do something, an experiment, and then you experience the results. The spiritual life is about experiencing the results of spiritual activity. And all of life is spiritual activity. But you have to begin to see it through an expansion of consciousness perspective. You see, families. Okay, God is love. And one of the goals of the devotee would be to expand our consciousness in love. So where's one of the places that almost everybody learns, or at least experiences to some degree, sometimes plus, sometimes minus, but in relationships, in family. The universe is forcing us to learn about love, about interacting with each other in positive ways. And of course, when you're in school, you don't always get it right. So currently, we see most of the people on the planet are not getting A+, when it comes to getting along and loving each other. Many people are down in the fail category. They don't get along at all. And you see in families, but this is the school. The school, one of the great schools for learning about how to care about others, is in the family and in relationships. So life itself is the spiritual life. But there's a point at which a student shifts from, here's the things that I've been told to do, to here's the things that I choose to do. And this is one of the great pivot points in what we would generally describe as a spiritual life, is that we become consciously on the spiritual path. We choose it. We become interested in it in a variety of ways. We become, through our interest, we have some experience, like many of us read Autobiography of a Yogi, and then it changed our lives, and we became disciples of this particular path. But that same process happens in most paths. Some experience, life opportunity presents itself, and people walk down that particular path. But it's a little bit like going to different universities. Every university has specialty areas, the things they're known for being really good at. And you can get educated at any one of them. But if you want to go to be an attorney, or to be a doctor, or an engineer, then you might want to go to one of the universities that specializes in that particular area of interest. And this is the spiritual, except everybody who's interested in engineering doesn't get into the top school. Sometimes they have to go to a lesser school, and then if they do well, maybe they can transfer into the top school, or otherwise maybe they only get the lesser school. Now that doesn't mean they're not getting an education. And this is why we need to understand that not every world religion is the same. But they're all educating people spiritually. They're all spiritual opportunities. And when I say that they're not the same, what I'm sharing is that it's not to look at things and judge them and say this is bad and this is good. It's to understand that if you went to the market and you were going to buy some cabbage, they're not all the same. They're all cabbage. But there's some that are better than others. And if a person is in the middle grades of spiritual consciousness, then their tendency is going to be they want rules, they want something believed, they're not capable of expansion past that. So they're actually serving in their class level that this is what they can handle. But there's a point at which the soul wants to go past the lower grades. But the thing is you have to be interested. And this is the key thing. This is one of the great challenges of the path of self-realization, is that we're required to be personally motivated to accomplish something. We have got to get ourselves moving and be spiritually motivated. And this is one of the great keys in the spiritual life, is to recognize personal responsibility for what we accomplish spiritually. Now, we have to be interested and we have to be motivated, but the reality is that we can't accomplish the most amount that can be accomplished without the help of the Sangha and of the Guru, most importantly the Guru. And this is a very important teaching. A very important thing to understand is that if we want to accomplish the goal of oneness, or get to as close as we can in this lifetime to oneness with infinite spirit, then what we need to do is attune ourselves to the Guru, and through that relationship we will attain as much as that we can attain in this lifetime. There's a really great story. There was this town. As I tell the story, you're going to recognize it, but I'll leave you in suspense for a minute. So there was a town, and in this town there was two well-known saints. And one of them became world famous, and he used to worship in a temple, and the Murti would come alive to him. And he would have a conversation with the divine through the Murti. And he was extremely magnetically uplifted through this experience. And this village was very fortunate because they also had another saint who was a potter. And so one day the village had a festival, and of course they wanted to have some holy people present to honor the festival, and they invited this saint whom the Murti came alive to him, and the potter. And so they're all sitting around the table, and the potter got up from his seat, and he started walking around, and he started slapping everybody in the face. Potters, one of the ways they can tell if there's a crack in the pot is the way they slap it, and then the way it resonates tells them whether there's a problem or not. So he went around, he slapped everybody, and of course he was well known as a high soul, and so everybody just took it. They were just humble and accepted it. But eventually this potter got around to this other saint, and he smacked him. And this, what are you doing? Why did you smack me? You shouldn't smack me. And the potter, he looked around the whole audience. Now everybody's watching, and he says, "There seems to be a crack in this pot." Well, needless to say, this saint was, a little confused that the divine would embarrass him in this way. And so he went to the Murti and he pranamed, and he says, what's going on? Why did this happen? And the divine said to him, "Well, I'm sorry, but there is a crack in this pot." And he said, "Well, I commune with you all the time." And the divine said, "Yes, but if you want to be free, you need a guru. I can't do that for you. It's my law." he says, well, where's my guru? And so he was instructed to go to a town not too far away, and he went. And he asked around for this fellow who was supposed to be his guru. And he was didn't quite understand, because when he brought up this fellow's name, everybody said, oh, that bum? He's usually hanging around the temple somewhere. So apparently this fellow didn't have such a great reputation around town. But he went and searched. He went to the temple. And he got into the temple, and there was a fellow lying down on the floor with his feet facing the altar and on top of a Shiva lingam, resting his feet on the lingam. And of course, this saint was just stupefied. I mean, he just didn't. He was just shocked. Couldn't believe. So he went over to the fellow, thinking that this was just a lazy bum, really. And he said, "What are you doing? Move your feet. You're desecrating the temple." And the fellow looked up to him, sleepy eyed. Huh? What? He says, your feet are facing the altar. You're desecrating the temple. He says, oh, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm old, I'm tired. Why don't you just move my feet where it's not facing the altar, where it's not on the lingam? And so he goes, oh, okay. So he grabs the fellow's feet and he whips them to the side, he puts them down, and the lingam's there. And then he moves the feet again, and the lingam's there. And he keeps trying to do it, and there's a problem. Everywhere the feet are faced, the lingam is there. And after a few moments, he starts to get, something's going on here. And then, of course, the old fellow stands up, and he's not a bum, but he's his guru. And of course, you probably recognize that this fellow's name was Namdev. And he recognized his guru, and he recognized the message of this lesson, which is that God is not in just one place. God is not just one set of beliefs. God is not just one small encapsulation of the solidification of thought. God is everywhere. God is in everything. We have to free ourselves from thinking that we're not on the spiritual path, and that there's anything that we can do in life that is not connected to life, to God and the spiritual path. Kriyanandaji wrote a very interesting song called The Life Mantra. And in this song he says, life is God, God is life. He says, life is love, love is God, God is life. And he says, God is joy, life is joy. It's this circle of this connectedness, this sense of non-separateness. These universal realities cannot be separated into that this religion is right, that religion is wrong. Yes, people can make a wrong religion by doing things that lead away from expansion of consciousness into selfishness and suffering. But in the end, you can never get away from God. There's no way to separate yourself once the soul in essence is the divine. All of life is the divine. There is no place that God is not. And so ultimately, even in the darkest corner of the creation, in the most confused state of negativity, God is present. And that, whatever consciousness is there, wherever a soul goes and becomes so confused, that soul will always eventually come back to omnipresent consciousness. So Namdev, after receiving the blessings of his guru, became quite well known all over India, singing the name of God and inspiring many, many thousands of people. And one day he wandered back to the village where he had worshipped God in the Murti, and he pranamed, and God decided to play with him a little bit and says, "Oh, Namdev, I've missed you. Where have you been? Why don't you come visit me anymore? It's not nice of you to ignore me." And then Namdev said, "Oh, Lord, I know you're playing with me. I see you everywhere." And then the Murti said, "Yes, now there's no crack in this pot." And this story, of course, there's many, many facets that we can look at. But the key thing, the point that I wanted to emphasize today is that there is no place where God is not. God is everywhere. So the tendency is to think, well, I have a family, I have a job, I have all of these responsibilities, which we think in our minds that they are somehow separate from God. That is delusion. The goal of the spiritual life is to be as present, as inwardly connected in the chapel, in the temple, in your meditation room, and in every place that you go in life. So one of the things that I experienced when I came to Ananda village and met Swami Kriyananda, which I later learned was clearly a Yoganandaji's tradition, the tradition of living life with a smile, but a smile that's connected to spirit inside. So Master taught, live with the joy of God, not with the joy of emotional ups and downs, but with the joy of inward connectedness to God. See God in every experience. This is the spiritual life. And the things that we do to deepen the spiritual life, the tools of meditation, the techniques that we practice, very importantly, Kriya Yoga, but devotion, satsang, service, all of these things are things to improve the quality of our spiritual life, but they don't in themselves define the spiritual life. The spiritual life in its essence is communion, attunement, absorption in our oneness with spirit. And every time you feel calmness in your heart, every time you feel peacefulness when things are going a little crazy around you, when you feel uplifted in any way, joy and a loving energy, these are all connected to a growing awareness of our connection to God. And one of the reasons that meditation is so important is that it's a tool for awakening our awareness of our inner connection to God. If you so God is like a mail order bride. These things come to me. So you know what a mail order bride is? When you right away and you order a bride because there's no one around. So now this is a new relationship, and you read in a catalog that you can get a bride. And so you read about the bride, and then you say, okay, I want the bride. And then maybe you write a couple letters to the bride, and you talk. Maybe today, of course, you have a phone. You talk to them on the phone, or you chat online. And so now you create a relationship, but eventually the bride arrives. And then you have to deepen that relationship in an ongoing manner. When we come onto the spiritual path, we are just getting to know, what does God feel like in me? And we don't know what that's like. We don't know what it is like to have a relationship with God. Because we're unfamiliar. So when we meditate, when we open our hearts with devotion, we will have an experience, a taste, a touch of that presence, which is our point of connectedness. Master said that the center of the universe for each of us is a point of intuitive perception in the heart. From your center, as we open ourselves up, we will begin to have a real relationship. And if you aren't experiencing some kind of growing awareness of God's presence in your life, the way that God feels to you, then you're not accomplishing as much as you could. You should have this experience. You will have this experience. And the goal of the spiritual life is to deepen and deepen, to expand that experience. And initially, you can, because the meditation room is quiet, and it's less distracting, you'll feel that calmness, that presence. Or you'll come to satsang and you'll feel a blessing. You'll feel that, and that blessing is a calmness, it's a presence. And it is the most, in fact, it's the only truly real relationship that we have. Because most human relationships are based on ego interest. What I want out of this relationship. The only thing God wants out of our relationship is love. God wants us to come home to omnipresent love and joy. And the school that we live in, our lives, is all designed to bring us, to help us to grow in that relationship. So all of the things that we're doing that we think are boring or a waste of time or we wish we didn't need to do them, each and every one of them is an opportunity to be closer to God. And we can begin to feel the peace and the bliss of meditation in the marketplace, in all relationships. And this, when we're living consciously to grow this in our lives, this is living the spiritual life. When I came to Ananda, I found a family of people who were dedicated to seeing the spiritual potential, the potential for connectedness in terms of positive feelings, but also a greater understanding about how to live in a way that is beneficial for everyone. Not just little self-interest, but the larger self-interest. We recognize that we are not complete unless we are expanding that joyful, loving consciousness through our lives. And it's in all of these outward experiences, we have created the need for them through our past over-involvement in the creation. And when we consciously make that shift to the spiritual life, our priorities change. So I've talked in recent times to a number of people who say that, the fellows that I used to spend time with, I don't feel like spending time with them anymore. I'm not interested in those old ways of living. I have new interests. And when you live in a town and you get to know everybody, it's easy to think that you have to be loyal to that old way of living. But if you were to move to a new town and they had a new style, then you wouldn't feel bad about entering into that new style. When we choose the spiritual life, what we're doing is we're choosing to change the way that we relate to our whole life. That has to do with body, mind, emotions, and spirit. All the way through the totality of our consciousness. And what we need to do is recognize that, and gradually we love and respect the past, but we grow towards expanding our consciousness and spirit. And we don't want the past to hold us back from our potential. And it takes courage. It takes commitment. Imagine, how easy, we understand this in terms of what it takes to go to the top university. You've got to be a scholastic champion. In the spiritual life, if you want to experience oneness, if you want to achieve your potential, you have to be a spiritual champion. The champion's goal isn't to push others down, but is to rise up and to encourage others to go along with them. And these are the saints. The saints are spiritual champions who are living a life that is committed to, through conscious choice, to expanding their awareness of infinite spirit, and then bringing that inner relationship out into whatever is given them to do in that lifetime. And each of us are given opportunities to share spirit, to grow in spirit, to become one with spirit. This is the spiritual life. And the outward coverings, the sets of beliefs that we have, the stories that we tell about how the creation was made and how long it exists, all of those are secondary. Because no matter what we think we understand, when we commune with spirit, we'll realize that we didn't understand very much. But through that communion, we can know all things. We can understand the truth of life, the truth of the creation as it's seen, and then the complete behind the scenes. How did it get this way? And to be consciously one with the source of all of life, infinite spirit.